Hello, everyone. In this video, we're going to talk about the effect of sugars on our immune system. This is kind of a follow-up video to the previous video we did, I think about a week ago, where we talked about the rate of increase in sugar consumption in Western societies over the past couple of centuries. I will link that video in the comment below and in the description below. But basically, the gist of that video was that sugar consumption has dramatically increased about 1,000-fold in the past 200 years. So people used to eat about a pound of sugar or less per year, and now we eat about 170, 160 pounds of sugar a year in most Western societies, which is a dramatic increase. And this has ramifications for immune function. So some of you maybe have heard this statistic that eating sugar decreases your immune function by almost 50%, so by half. That comes from this paper, which is The Role of Sugars in Human Neutrophilic Phagocytosis. This is a paper published in 1973 in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition. Before we go further, you may want to go back and watch this video where I talk about how the immune system deals with COVID-19 and other viruses. That is a kind of a longer video, but if you really want to know how we deal with viruses, it's worth, and you're curious about that, it's worth your time to go through that, because we are going to talk about many of the different immune functions in this video that are we go over them in this previous video. Okay, so I downloaded the original paper, and it looks like this, and let's go over what they did. So what they did is they got 10 subjects between the ages of, well, there was one teenage boy, and then everyone else was between the ages of 20 and 34. So basically healthy young people, and then 8 people with abnormal glucose levels. So 18 people total. And they gave them various things. So they gave them 100 grams of carbohydrate, which included glucose, starch, fructose, sucrose, and honey and orange juice. And honey is composed of glucose, fructose, sucrose, dextrin. And orange juice is glucose, fructose, and sucrose. And what they did is, it's a little bit unclear from their methods, but I think what they did is they didn't give them actual honey and actual orange juice. They gave them just the carbohydrate content of those things. So it's not exactly the same thing as honey and glucose. They gave a kind of a facsimile of it by making it. Interestingly, this study was done at Loma Linda University, which is the university that I work at currently. So anyways, what they did is after a 12-hour fast, so overnight, so these people didn't have any food overnight. They came in kind of first thing in the morning, and they gave them 100 grams of these things. And what they did is they drew their blood at 30 minutes, hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 5 hours after the load of sugar. And then they put their blood in a mixture with bacteria, and they let it sit for 30 minutes to let the white blood cells eat the bacteria, to destroy the bacteria. And then they looked at the first 50 neutrophils, and neutrophils are a type of blood cell, and they were mentioned in this video if you want to know what neutrophils are. And they counted how many bacteria were in each, on average, the first 50 neutrophils. All right, so let's look. This is the table that you want to look at. So this is their baseline level. So at baseline level, it was about 15 to 16. Each neutrophil had destroyed 15 to 16 bacteria. And so after the glucose or the sugar load, you see that the peak decrease is at 1 hour. So at 1 hour, the worst is fructose and sucrose, and they're almost half of the baseline. And what you can see is even after 5 hours, it remains depressed. So that's where we get this idea that there's a 50% decrease in immune function after a sugar load. Now, that's not completely accurate because it's just looking at neutrophilic phagocytosis, which is neutrophils eating bacteria. So that's not all your immune function. And this was back in 1973. So obviously work has been done since then, right? And so there's two review papers. This one is called Acute Hyperglycemia, the Innate Immune System. And this was published in 2005 at Critical Care Medicine. And this is the effect of short-term hyperglycemia on the innate immune system, February 2016. Both of these basically looked at all the studies between 1970 and 2014. This one looked at all the studies from 1966 to 2004 that looked at hyperglycemia and immune function, and basically they both found similar things. And what they did is they found that the major thing that was studied was neutrophils, because they're easy to study, and they found that neutrophil function is greatly decreased, as in this. Basically, this is the seminal paper in that thing. But the other things they realized is that there's a lot of pro-inflammatory cytokines that are induced by a sugar load, and that there is a increase in vascular permeability, and there's a decrease in complement function. And complement is a very important part of your immune system to deal with viruses and other pathogens. And so you find that in this, and they give you the same thing here. They talk about hyperglycemia inhibits neutrophil function, inhibits function of toll light receptors, increases vascular permeability but decreases dilation, so there's less white blood cells coming into the area. And then hyperglycemia causes this production and release of cytokines, giving you a kind of a pro-inflammatory state, which is a problem, and then causes glycosylation of proteins and complement, which makes complement not work as well. So the same things happen. So basically, there are large amounts of papers over the past several decades that indicate that there's a significant decrease in immune function, up to about 50%, with a sugar load that can last up to 5 hours after your sugar load. The sugar load used here was 100 grams. 100 grams is a large amount of sugar. It's equivalent to about 4 pieces of apple pie, 3 pieces of pecan pie, 2.5 cans of Coke, or, and this is the thing that my kids love to eat the most, is boba tea. And it's equal to 1 serving of boba tea has 100 grams of sugar. So 1 serving of boba tea is essentially the same as 2.5 cans of Coke, and about 4 pieces of apple pie. And this was a study that was published out of Singapore when they were looking at it, because they realized that bubble tea is very popular in the East and is popular in the United States as well. And there's a reason why. It has inordinate amounts of sugar. The amount of sugar in bubble tea is much higher than in soda. So just like that video that we put out a little while ago, talking about how exercise is almost equivalent to vaccination in COVID protection, taking a large sugar load is about equivalent to not being vaccinated. The risk for COVID is similar to being not vaccinated. So in the ideal situation, you would be vaccinated, you would exercise, and you would avoid sugar loads. That would be the best. If you're unvaccinated, don't exercise, and have sugar loads, that's like the worst possible immune function that you can possibly have. But being vaccinated and then having large sugar loads frequently is essentially like you're making yourself as if you are not vaccinated in terms of immune function and risk reduction from having severe COVID. So I know this time of year, especially around Thanksgiving, Christmas, there is a lot of sweets being, we go to parties, there's lots of pies, ice cream, drinks, cookies, that kind of stuff. It's hard to avoid, but it's good to keep in mind the effect that sugar has on your immune system, and to avoid it if possible. And as you know from the previous video on our sugar intake, the amount of sugar that we intake these days is far beyond what historically humans have taken for much of our history. All right, so tell me what you guys think. Does this information help you reduce sugar intake, or sugar just tastes too good to avoid? Thanks for watching.